All right. All right, we're back. So, welcome to CE Days, and we're going to do ventilator management. Okay, so you guys, and I'm glad Sean's here so he can help me with this again. We have 15 of these vents now. Is that right? And we're going to place those out in the field, and eventually our goal is to have vents on all the trucks, and that's projected into next fiscal year. So that's exciting. That's really exciting news. Seeing on what we've currently been using to moving into the O2 E700 series. Okay, these devices are oxygen driven, though there is somewhat of a generated piece whenever you change the FiO2 to 60%. Then they'll do an intake on that, and we'll explain that here in just a little bit. But these devices are really light, and in our first introduction in that, it was very limited into just using the CPAP pressure support. But today, we'll actually go through all the modes and talk about basically some concepts of these modes, when we're ones that we'll use with. In the future, we see expanded protocols. To answer your question, I already know that some of you are thinking this, that with these, we'll have expanded protocols to induce or to even use these in scenarios such as, okay, Michael, I see it already in your eyes, CPR, right? Because it has a CPR mode in it, so it can ventilate asynchronized or synchronized with your 30 and 2 compressions. It has that option. It also has the other modes, which I'll just go ahead and move into. Assist control, which is one that I would say in the pre-hospital environment that we like a lot, and we'll talk about the definition of that one. Synchronized intermittent mandatory ventilation, SIMV. We'll actually talk about that one, which, believe it or not a lot of these are different than the others. There's just added features to some of them. And just always remember, and I'll say this, there's two different modes that we're actually providing ventilation. One is by volume, and the other one's pressure, okay? And so I'll quiz you every once in a while and say, which mode are we in, and is this a volume or a pressure mode, right? And kind of get that mindset. And then we get CPAP, which we all been using, right? But now we'll have this in the ability. And this afternoon, guess what? You'll actually be able to put these CPAPs on with masks that we have for you, so you can play with it and feel that and know what it feels like to not just be on CPAP, which I'm on it every night, by the way. I don't know if anybody does CPAP. Here we go. Yesterday we had one. He was actually doing BiPAP for central sleep apnea. So he had I think he was doing a 20 over 10, on it. And I'll explain what that is in just a little while when we get to that mode. So then we have CPAP pressure support, which is what we've all come to know as bi-level or BiPAP. We just don't call it that. And then the CPR mode. Okay. So when we finish with this, we'll talk about all the modes and the functions, and then we'll finally get into that part there. But first, we need to look at the control and display layout. And the one thing that I'll tell you that's probably the most important thing, and while we're playing with it this afternoon, you'll figure this out. This round knob that's right here, that you see right here, every time you make a change, you have to hit this button twice. They'll actually pull this up and they'll say confirmation symbol. So the first one, that's going to pop up. You don't hit it again, all of a sudden you're going to be back in the setting that you were at previously. It defaults it back to it, okay, whatever it was. And then you're going, I knew I just changed that, but you didn't hit the button twice. Okay, so that's an important one that you need to remember. So let's just kind of work our way around. One of the things that you'll learn to identify early is this nice triangle right here. That is the warning indicator. So it pops up a lot because this device has lots of things that it's measuring. High pressure alarms, low pressure alarms. We'll actually talk about those, why we see high pressure alarms, why we see low pressure alarms. We'll hit on that. We'll talk about leaks, which is part of the low pressure alarms, but it actually will tell you and give you a symbol like you have a mass leak or there's something specific, and so you can look for that. Or another one it'd be is your patient's not breathing. Maybe you're in a mode where it's not providing ventilation, but guess what? This thing actually has an apnea alarm that will alert, and then after 20 seconds, which is the default setting, it'll go right into assist control mode and start ventilating your patient at the minimum settings that are there for the control side. Okay? So kind of interesting. So warning indicator definitely helps. Then if you kind of follow down with these three right here, you'll actually see there's the battery operation indicator, external power, and the battery charging indicator. I have this one. And if I turn it on, see how it all lit up right there? And that's the charged one, so I actually need to turn it off. And move this one over here. So I was running this one, and this one goes through the charge. Okay, so we got those right. This other one, E, what does it say? Manual and hold that. So you know E is actually, so if you're watching your patient and for some reason you don't feel comfortable time and you want to give them a breath, you can reach over there and give them a preset default value or whatever value you had it set out. That's pretty cool, right? Then, of course, you have F, which is your breath. And I haven't seen any problem. I have this on outside, in here. I can always see the screen. It looks good. So I like that. But you can adjust it. G is the one that I do all the time when I silence the alarm. Because typically I'm playing with it, and I see different things, such as whenever I disconnect or maybe I stop bagging. The alarm comes on, you'll see that alarm pop up. And then again, after a preset of 20 seconds, what does it do? It defaults into the system. So it always does that. G is your alarm setting. You can silence it. H, you just have a pause or reset button. You can actually pause the bit and reset that there. I, when you look here, there's a lock button, so it locks all that out. To hit something or somebody hit something and change something. J is your waveform selection. Now, after we go through a few slides, we're going to come to that piece where you're going to get to see different things, such as flow, and pressures, and you get to kind of pick which one you want to see, and I'll tell you which one that I like, but it will allow you to do like, well, we're going to switch back and forth. Basically, this is a cancel button for any requests that you did. Then you have your confirmation, again, is where we started off at, and your power button is the last thing. Power, you have to press and hold. So simple enough, right? So don't memorize, you won't have it memorized, but now you've been subjected to it, then it comes very easy. Okay, so we'll do a lot of areas. Where's your data at? Upload? No, that I'm aware of, we might come with another. It's because we've data in a lot of things, but this is quite a. Okay, so what I want you to look at is the external connectors, which are right here on this end. Very simple. We actually put those. The biggest one goes on here. One has a little lock. One is just a slip-on that slides over. You can't mess it up. It only goes on one way. Well, wait, I say that. Somebody could cut the lure lock and just don't modify it, okay? Don't modify it. Don't modify it. It's very simple. The T There we go. Thank you. All right. So T is the high pressure, which then goes to the regulator. Oh, let's talk about that. So where is it at? I have two of them. Here's one right here. This one here is special. It has to go with this this ventilator, because it is designed to go up to, it says 60 PSI. Okay. The other regulators that we have are, I think 50 is the max, and it's a ramp up. So it doesn't have the pressure support that this ventilator needs. So we had to go back and actually purchase these. And we're still have a few on back order that are being made. Oh, we got them all? It's a good deal. So very important that whenever you're checking off your equipment in the morning, that you make sure you have all the product, So you have to have your circuit, the charger, you have to have this regulator, and then your truck should always automatically have the bigger one. So if you know on your other, you have a quick connect on the other vent, make sure that whenever they're swapping those out, you take that off and put that with this one, because you'll need it, especially when you're in the facility or in the back of the ambulance. You'll be able to take this off from the tank, put that on, quick connect in, and then that will actually give you your supply off your truck. For what? What was this? Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, when that'd be kind of cool, yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll need those, because that's what you'll be able to screw into your high pressure to go into the truck or a facility, because, what you should be doing is put it in the wall and hook your patient up while they're still in their bed, and testing based off of what we're going to see in a little bit, what your mode and all your values are, and then you're going to see how your patient does. And I heard this being said the other day, is it doesn't matter this vent or any other vent that's out there, you're going to have some variances in how the patient's receiving that pressure, and it might be a little bit discomforting or not enough, and you might have to make some adjustments to get them to that piece. So that 10, 15, 20, sometimes 20 minutes might be necessary whenever you're doing that. And then once you get that and your patient, if you feel stable on your vent, then you're able to move them over. And right before you walk out the door, take them off the wall, put them on your tank, and then go. And because I'll just say this, I can burn through this tank here on 100% FiO2, doing what we do in the classroom in probably about 15 minutes. Or I can make it last over an hour at 60% with doing the same thing. So, you just realize you do have some time limitations on that. So if you happen to be at a really big facility, it might be beneficial for you to have 2 tanks, just in case. Yeah, you met just in case. You know who that person is, right? So, all right, what else do I have on here? O is your power. That's what I just plugged in over here. This right here, and Sean, I don't know if in logistics they have it, but there's actually a filter that's right here. Those will be going out, I'm sure, so that way we can replace those after usage. Because the filter goes right behind this little plastic part right here, our rubber piece, and that's the intake for the 21% that we're going in to blend to make that 60% for your FiO2. So definitely a piece that you'll have to pay attention to. And it's like it's a soft rubber, so it just pulls off, and that filter's right there, so it's easy for you to replace it. It's not very cumbersome. Okay, the next thing is the patient circuit. What's important here is that you always, when you have alarms, one of the things that we're always going to look at is everything connected, right? Because that will actually produce different alarms. In fact, yesterday, one of the medics decided to, without me knowing, pull this one off, put it here, and this one on that one, and it wasn't sensing, and it wasn't providing breaths. And they're like, well, it's right here in the same piece of plastic. Why isn't it working? I said, switch it back. And as soon as it did, it started working. So there's purpose for them being in the right place for what they're doing. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen that have come off with a little bit of movement and stuff. So you can kind of go through here and see that U up here is actually the breathing control hose. V that you see that's up here basically are the two pressure sensing hoses. W is the one-way intake hose. You can see the X is the exhaust right here. And then your breathing valve, Y, at the very end right here. And then your flow sensor is Z. Where is that at? There it is. So you can definitely see that. And so it's important, again, to have all these pieces. And also, at this very end right here, what goes on here? End tidal filter, right. So you can put end tidal here, filter. You can put your nebs, right, on that, between that. And so there's ways of actually... Because, well, it's just secure. Because you have exhalation and you want that filtered coming out. Yeah. 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 Well, if it was unfiltered, then whatever they're exhaling is going to come out right here, and that'll contaminate your atmosphere. Yeah. That's, yeah. No. Yes, we do. There was a box right here. Oh, it's over here. And if not, we'll get some again, because I had some in here from yesterday. Yeah, we'll get it for the afternoon piece. But it's the regular filter that you've been using that goes on the very end of that. Okay. All right. So now we're actually ready to turn it on. Okay, so what did we do? We hit the button up here, pressed it down, and we waited. And it takes about a second or two. It'll light up, and this is the first screen that you're going to see. So it defaults to the child, and then you have adult, and you'll ask me, well, what do we actually see? Well, there's default values based on each one of them. And the next screen, you'll actually see those. Just have a note here that on infants, they have to be greater than 14 pounds. 13 pounds to be able to use based on the default settings. And so what we'll do for today, since we're all adults here, is we'll move this into the adult. So you click the knob right here, turn it, rotate this into it, and then what? Double click it, and this is what you'll get. All right, so the first mode that actually comes on when you turn the monitor on is assist control. Well, what does that mean, assist control? Well, basically, the ventilator itself will deliver a mechanical ventilation at a set tidal volume rate. And if the patient has spontaneous breaths above that rate of 10, because that's the default here, and it's above that, it will never go into the control mode. In other words, in assist mode, the patient's breathing on their own. They're just mildly sedated, and it will provide, in the default mode, 500 of tidal volume, and it will actually, whatever you give, like in PEEP, let's see, our PEEP is right here at 5, so it's already defaulted to some of those values. And as long as the patient's breathing on their own greater than 10 a minute, it will never actually trigger for a manual or a breath from the ventilator. Now, as soon as that patient's respiratory drive drops below that, then they'll pick up and start ventilating, and they'll do manual ventilations, okay, rather than it doing by the patient himself. So it has two modes: assisting for whenever they're breathing. So they take a breath, there'll be a trigger that will sense that change in the pressure, and then give that volume. This is a volume mode in our ventilator. Okay, so just remember that's volume in the assist control. Okay. So just kind of looking through here, you can again see here's our default setting for adult. So 510 minute volume is actually calculated by the machine. Our inspiratory expiratory is set at 1 to 2, PEEP at 5, and then we have some default alarms right here for our PMAX, which is set at 30, but can go from 2 to 40. It has our minimums. There's another one there from 10 to 80 for our PMAX, not our MVMAX, but PMAX is 10 to 80. And it's set normally at 30, but you can go up a little bit on that. And then our minimums on it. Now on the screen, these values are here. So there's your assist control. There's your volume. There's your rate. There's your IE. We actually have PEEP, and here it's set at 0 when I was playing with it and taking this picture. And we have a 0 trigger. And here's our FiO2 set at 100, which today when we're practicing, you're immediately, as soon as turning it on, we'll come down here to the 100 and turn it to 60 to reduce the amount of O2 we're using these tanks during a demonstration. Okay. A lot of these other pieces will actually fill in automatically by the ventilator. Up here you can see the total volume of air that is actually being provided with each breath, the rate at which the breaths are being given, your paw pressures when you're looking at those. And so when you look at here, this is your maximum airway pressure, Pmax of 60, minimum is 3 on here. And so one of the footnotes that I have on here is you take this right here, a 6-foot tall male, they would normally weigh about 80 kilos, times 8, that's 640 milliliters. Now, our algorithm, our CPGs tells us what's our volume of air that we can give. It's between 6 to 8, right? So typically I see people start lower settings and then go up if necessary. But I think the key here is that you look at the ideal body weight. So there's your algorithm. There's where you see your volume piece. But then if you look over here, you can actually see ideal weight is based off of what? The height. So we took that 6-foot tall person. We gave him 80 because that was kind of in the middle between 72 and 89. And we gave him that, that much volume that was a default. Now remember, our default's set at 5. So if you have a 5-foot male, there's that. Times 8 is 400. That's a 50 kilo, 50 kilo patient. Now somebody said, well, what happens if they're taller than 6 foot? What do? We'll go back over here and look at this formula. So a male, which is 50 kilos at 5 feet, for every inch above 5 foot, you're going to add 2.3 kilos. Remember, just because you have a 400-pound person doesn't mean you have a 400-pound lung, right? You got the same size lungs, it's just they built around it, right? So we're not adding that additional volume necessarily. Does everybody understand that one? Okay. Good deal. Yeah, ideal. So that's why they go through that ideal weight. Yeah. All right, let me go back here for a second. Question on assist control. We know this is a volume-generated delivery method, right? We know that this, let's do some examples. Can assist control work with somebody that's on propofol that has their own respiratory drive, but just mildly sedated? Sure. Sure it could. And then if we raised it up or we over-sedated using something else and we killed their respiratory drive, then the default is what? If they stopped breathing? It starts, well, the default's at 10, right? So if it drops below that, then the default will go into control and actually support their ventilation at that rate. So you can see that it can actually function under those two modes, right?
Yeah, somebody on that's what I hate. I ain't facing on profile period. It's bent, it's innovated, with all of that first for it, just so I don't have to fighting back against the 2000s because it'll squeal the whole time.
Oh yeah. So you're.
And this one, if they're fighting back against it, then it won't bend on top.
So fighting in what way? You mean like they're taking a breath? It's going to allow them to breathe at their own rate. So if they're breathing faster, then you'll do that. But here's the deal. If you actually find somebody that's like breathing faster than what you're comfortable with, you have to ask the question is, how are my gases, right? So you're still monitoring end tidal. Am I retaining end tidal, or am I good with end tidal, or am I bleeding too much off, blowing too much off? And then, well. Sure. Right. So, well, you got to watch it, and then you can adjust. And we're going to actually do troubleshooting here in a minute. So this slide here is intended for us to understand the mode. But in the future slides here in just a little bit, we're actually going to talk about troubleshooting using what we have here. So the thing that you're going to do whenever you go in, if it's going to be an interfacility, is the mode. You have to know what their mode is, which we'll go over the other modes in just a little bit. The rate, right? The volume, the FiO2, and the PEEP. Yep. So that. Yeah, because it's going to sense trigger. Yeah, the thing that I would look at is because your trigger is going to sense and then give that volume when they take an inspiration, because they'll sense it and then give it to them, like you just said. The thing is if the volume's not enough and they still feel short in their what they're taking in, you'll actually see that. Then you can make adjustments to increase volume. Remember this, and it's in the next slides, but since we're talking about it, whenever you're dealing with CO2 issues and retaining, you got two modes that you're messing with. It can be the rate or the volume. And I challenged everybody here yesterday. I sat there and said, take some short breaths. Going faster, did that help? What helped? Taking that deep breath, right? So there you go. So sometimes you have to gauge that and see, if I'm making a change, is it better for me to give them volume rather than rate? Because rate, think about this. This takes us back to our whole dead airspace issues, right? Increasing rate increases what? Dead airspace time, right? So you have a factor that you have to deal with. So volume sometimes is better than making rate, though you can change rate. All right, did that help? A little bit? We know what the mode is. Am I good? I got my resident vent expert here that taught me a lot, so we're on task. Yeah? Okay, all right. Yeah, all right. He's being quiet. All right, so here's the part that I think is really beneficial. John, we were talking about this earlier. Look, yeah. Yeah.
So we were teaching everybody that 5 foot tall and 6 foot tall would equal da-da-da-da. I mean, to me, that's just going to lead to bad things. Because you're going to have people out there that are going to go to that 400-pound patient. They're going to put the volume at a 400-pound patient.
Right.
And they're going to do.
Because that's not ideal, though.
That's not ideal. I mean, we need to be enforcing the ideal body weight thing.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm hoping we're doing here. I mean, we did mention it. Everybody understands ideal body weight. Understand it's not the actual weight. It's based off of the height that's giving us the volume that we would see that should be going into those lungs. Because his concern is, I've heard this from him before, is if you actually have that 400 pound and you calculate it that way, you're going to give volume that's going to cause barotrauma. Okay, so you got to stay away from that and keep it ideal.